Let's welcome our next speaker. Sorry for the... So our next speaker is Sophia Nguyen from National University of Singapore. So she will talk about predicting mental health and mortality, insights from functional connectivity and cross-dataset validation.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm just going to skip this first slide for the interest of time. Okay, I have no disclosures. So you might be familiar with the biopsychosocial model of health, which states that illness and health are the results of interaction between biological, psychological, and social factors. In the middle-aged and older adults, people face significant life changes, health issues, and social isolation, all impacting their well-being. Therefore, we need to study these populations in order to gain insights for tailored interventions, which is vital for our aging society's mental health. There have been many attempting to link psychopathology and underlying brain imaging phenotypes. The idea that there are both common and dissociable markers associated with dimension of psychopathology has been reiterated in many literatures. This is where we saw a common overarching general psychopathology factors, or commonly known as the P factors, that are shared across all disorders, as well as different connectivity patterns associated with different lower dimensions, such as externalizing, internalizing, etc. As these studies have mainly focused on younger populations, therefore, we think it would be crucial for us to look at how these neuroimaging markers for psychopathology might manifest itself in older age group. So with that, here's my study design for this project. I'll be using the resting state fMRI from the UK Biobank studies, and using that, I can construct the functional connectivity matrix for each participant. For the behavioral data, we derived 36 mental health questionnaire measures using the online mental health questionnaire, which categorize alcohol addiction, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, and psychosis. From there, I can utilize a multivariate partial least squares correlation approach to study how functional measures might relate to different mental health measures. Ideally, we will be able to derive consistent latent variable pairs linking brain and behavior measures, as well as identify reliable brain regions that characterize each of these latent variables. So to internally validate our results, we will also carry out the split half analysis, where we split the subjects into 2 equal data sets and then we run the POS analysis. We also carry out an external validation using HCP aging dataset, which I will show you later. So this table here shows the demographics of the samples, including age, sex, the MRI information, as well as the mental health questionnaire measures. So after quality control, a total of 6,529 participants remained for further analysis. We excluded subjects with excessive motion, as well as those who did not have diagnosis data. So now let me show you the results. Using the partial least square correlation approach, we extracted 2 significant latent variables. So the first latent variable explained around 28% of overall covariance, represented a general psychopathology factors, where you can see here, most of the mental health items show a positive correlation to the brain scores. Looking at the brain salience profile, we noted that significant networks underlying this latent variable are the somatomotor networks, followed by the default mode network. Individuals with higher psychiatric burden exhibited lower functional connectivity within the somatomotor network, higher functional connectivity within the default mode networks, as well as higher network connectivity between the somatomotor and default mode networks. These findings suggested that a general factor representing overall psychopathology might be underscored by primarily aberrant connectivity from the somatomotor and default mode networks. So both of these networks have been previously shown to be implicated in just diagnostic dimensions in younger patients, which suggested their pivotal and enduring roles. So similar results can also be seen in the split half analysis, but for the interest of time, I will not show you the very details. So the second latent variable, explained around 17% of the overall covariance, emphasized distinction between alcohol addiction and symptom related to depression and PTSD, with positive correlation for the, with negative correlation for the alcohol symptoms and positive correlations for most depression and PTSD-related symptoms. So again here, we look at the brain salience profile. We see that less alcoholic problem but higher depression and PTSD-related issues are associated with lower subcortical FC and FC between the attentional network. These networks have been shown to be involved in the attention and reward response, which are pathways often affected in these disorders. Our result therefore demonstrated the delicate balance that needs to be maintained for the healthy mental state, where disruption to the same system can lead to distinct disease outcomes. Again, we observe similar results in the speed half analysis. So previously, I have shown you that the multivariate correlation analysis revealed two brain and behavior profiles that are associated to each other. So corresponding to these brain profiles, each participant would then have two sets of brain scores, which represents how much each individual exhibit a particular brain connectivity pattern. So using these brain scores, the first question we want to ask is, can the brain phenotype predict future mental health and mortality outcome? So to do this, we identify participants who suffer from anxiety and depression and compare the brain score between groups as their status remain or change between the two time points. We then compare the brain scores between the four groups for each of the disease. Both sub-analyses reveal that for anxiety, the general psychopathology brain scores differentiate between the group who remains anxiety-free over time, which is the box in red here, versus the group with current anxiety regardless of their future outcomes, as you've seen in the box in green and yellow. Importantly, we noted that for depression, the group with persistent depression, which is colored in green here, also show higher general psychopathology brain scores compared to those who only develop depression in future, in purple, and those who remitted, which is in yellow. This suggested that our brain scores might be able to indicate risks and vulnerabilities by differentiating transition and remission across different mental health disorders. So beyond just mental health outcomes, we also wanted to estimate the values of the brain scores in predicting mortality risk. Here we assess the relationship between the brain scores from the first two latent variables and mortality. Cox proportional hazard models reveal that the brain score reflecting overall psychopathology burden was a significant predictor of mortality. And this is even after accounting for age, sex, education, socio-economic status as measured by Townsend Deprivation Index. This model also significantly outperformed the base model without using the brain scores. This showed that the baseline brain phenotype reflecting general psychopathology was an important risk factor for future mortality. So, as I briefly mentioned to you previously, we also seek to validate our finding not only internally, but also using an external data set. So in a similar manner, using the brain profile obtained in the correlation analysis, I can project it to the functional connectivity matrix and obtain the brain scores for each individual in this new data set. So in this analysis, we want to see whether the general psychopathology imaging construct can also be validated in an independent cohort of HCP aging. So here we have the correlation of the projected brain scores with total mental health problems in HCP aging. We saw that the brain score obtained from the first latent variable, which is associated with general psychopathology, is significantly correlated with total mental health problems. However, this is not seen in the second latent variable, which is consistent with the behavioral phenotype explained by each of these latent variables. This shows that our imaging construct remains robust in a different data sets, again highlighting the evidence of a chance diagnostic dimension as supported by brain functional connectivity. So in conclusion, we have found that dimension of psychopathology in the middle-aged and older adult groups are indeed structured in this hierarchy, with the overall psychopathology factor and factors separating different disorders. We also observe distinct functional regions involved in the different level of this hierarchy. We noted that the brain phenotype reflecting higher overall psychopathology displays potential to differentiate longitudinal mental health trajectory and mortality outcome, and that this same phenotype is robust across data sets. So all in all, this underscores the importance of comprehending brain network phenotypes related to mental disorders within the framework of chance diagnostic dimensions. So with that, I have come to the end of my presentation. I would like to thank my supervisor, Professor Helen Cho, for her guidance, and all my lab members who have contributed to this project. Please scan the QR code here and check out our other works in OHBM. Finally, I would like to thank you for the audience for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for the talk, Sophia. So we have time for maybe 1 to 2 questions. We have one on the app now. If you want to ask any question, you could also use the mic. So for the question online, it's about, so the UKB mental health markers happen years after the neuroimaging. How do you control for the variability due to that?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the mental health questionnaires are collected at different time variables across the, compared to the imaging markers. So we did correct that for the time where the age of the participants, at the time when they collected the imaging measure, as well as the age of the participants at the time when the mental health measures are collected. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we got a question from the audience.
Sorry, can I ask a quick follow-up question? Because if I remember correctly, there might be a subset subjects, actually, their online questionnaire was acquired before their first baseline image acquisition. Do you also account for that in your study?
Yeah, so yes, we actually did look at we did correct that for the age where those participants are collected. But if you're talking about whether we kind of subdivide them to like groups who have mental health questionnaires corrected before and after, no, we haven't tried that, but that is a good idea. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I find your results relating the somatomotor network connectivity to general psychopathology particularly interesting, partially because I see it a lot in my own work, especially in addiction, but I often have trouble interpreting this. So when I find disruptions in unimodal networks, what does this mean with respect to the mental health or psychopathology condition itself?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because when we found out that the somatomotor networks being so salient and important in our first latent variable that reflects general psychopathology, we are also quite surprised. And actually, as we read up on more literatures, we found that this is not an isolated incident, and there's plenty previous literature that actually highlighted the importance of a somatomotor and sensory networks in not just addiction, as your paper mentions, as also depression and even general psychopathologies. So from my own interpretations, I think recently we have been focusing in OHBM on the interaction of the brain-body phenotypes. So you can see that for the somatomotor networks, you can see there's an interaction between motor functioning as well as psychopathologies. And I wonder whether this interaction, these bidirectional relationships, this is why these networks comes up to become so salient in all the different psychopathologies and mental health disorders that we investigated. Yeah.
Thank you.